Hey everyone! Thank you so much for joining us here today. I am Aria Finger, and I am Reid's Chief of Staff, and I have been working closely with Lever for Change on the Trust in American Institutions Challenge. I am so excited to be here today to talk to Reid Hoffman, who is the co-founder of LinkedIn, partner at Greylock. He wrote an upcoming book, Super Agency. If you're interested in AI, check it out. And also the absolutely fantastic Cecilia Conrad, who is the CEO of Lever for Change. So you guys all know why we are here. We launched the Trust in American Institutions Challenge. It's a $10 million open call, and we're super excited to hear everyone who is just as excited about this as we are. And so I'm going to be asking questions of Reid and Cecilia today, and then at the end we have time for your questions. So please put your questions in the chat, write them down, save them. We will try to get to as many questions as we can at the end. If we don't, there's another webinar coming up in a few weeks with Lever for Change where they're happy to answer more questions. We'll have an email address for you as well. So let's jump right in. So Lever for Change is an incredible nonprofit, and it facilitates large open calls just like this with the intent of, one, ensuring that it is an open call so we can get all of the amazing ideas that are out there, and then also brings on follow-on philanthropy. So while this is a $10 million open call, nothing would make us more excited than we have other funders come on board and join us to fund the amazing ideas that will come out of this challenge. So let's kick it off. Cecilia, could you just give us a quick overview of your own words of Lever for Change and the Trust in American Institutions Challenge?
Certainly. I'm so happy to be here, and thanks to everyone for joining us. So as Aria said, Lever for Change works to connect donors to really bold, scalable solutions to global challenges through customized open calls, and also through a curatorial service that makes ideas available to funders after an open call has finished. Our goal is to mobilize diverse talent, amplify inspiring ideas, and catalyze big investments. We're field agnostic. We've managed challenges, over 16 of them, ranging from durable futures to refugees, to reducing CO2 emissions, maternal and infant health. And we're especially excited to partner with Reid, who I should say is an early supporter of Lever for Change, on the Trust in American Institutions Challenge. This challenge is looking for bold ideas to increase trust in one or more of the core institutions that underpin American democracy. This could include government, media, public health, higher education, and more. So applicants are welcome to propose other institutions that they think are critical. Reid has committed one grant of $10 million, but we are in conversation with other funders to expand the number of grants.
So Reid, Cecilia, thank you so much. I love that. And Reid, you and I have been talking about this for such a long time. Can you talk about why you decided to be a part of this challenge and why right now in particular?
So it was a project that was multiple years in the making, not just because, I also think Cecilia is amazing and, joined the board when she launched the organization. But it's because it's kind of the question around, all right, so I think the style of Lever for Change challenge is actually kind of a bold and, rare kind of initiative for discovering really great levers by which you can move the world off the kind of Archimedean lever philosophy. And it's kind of, for a person who thinks in networks, here we're on LinkedIn, I think in networks, it was kind of a network approach based on doing that. And so we were talking about what are the various ways that this lever could be applied to some of the really key issues that people are not necessarily tracking as carefully, because people obviously talk a lot about climate change and they talk about economic justice and other really important issues. And we're like, okay, what are some of the things that might be less visible at the forefront, but absolutely foundational? And when you think about kind of how it is that we've created kind of modern amazing societies in life, a lot of that is through having created fundamentally great institutions around democracy and how we vote, institutions around the kind of rule of law, institutions in kind of kind of public infrastructure and trust. And one of the things that has substantially degraded is kind of this trust in institutions. And I think it's actually a really important thing, because it's to some degree the lack of trust itself breaks them, and yet they're fundamentally to how we live. And so it's our trust in each other, our trust in our society, our belief in the future, our ability to invest in our communities, and most essentially, I think one of the great, kind of only a few centuries old modern inventions is, kind of democracy. And I think that's, kind of critically important. And so, doing this, we decided was the absolute right thing. And, people might think because it's coming out now, it had anything to do with the election. It was actually decided, a year, like 15, 18 months ago, and all the planning that's gone into this.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really great point. As everyone asks us, it's like, no matter, this is not a political challenge in any way. This is like an American challenge. This is a challenge for anyone who wants the American experiment to go well.
It's worth noting that the decline in trust has been over decades.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, Cecilia, do you want to say a little bit more about why you think like right now is such a good time for this challenge?
Yes, I will. I mean, I think as I've noted, there has been this decline in trust that has been across all institutions, including my own sector, the nonprofit. We're still one of the most trusted, but that also has been on the decline. There is one space where there's very little of a partisan gap. It's shared across people of all political persuasions, and it's particularly concerning because it is most prevalent among the youngest people.
Mm-hmm. No, that's actually a really great point. So all ages, all sectors of society. So Reid, can you talk a little bit about when we're thinking about restoring trust in institutions, what institutions are you hoping people focus on, and why in particular?
Well, part of the thing about, this is part of the thing I've learned about being a Silicon Valley entrepreneur and investor, is that the things that you're most delighted to potentially find out are the ones you weren't expecting. It's like, for example, as an investor, what I want is an entrepreneur like Brian Chesky and Joe and Nate kind of coming to me with Airbnb with like, oh my God, I hadn't ever thought about it before. And that could be the lever. So it's, people would normally kind of think that it's things like, kind of call it, elections and polls and watching. But then you'd actually get to like, you hope for things like libraries or public schools or community centers. I mean, you could even imagine, some of this being kind of the questions around how community colleges could get in the mix. And so I think that the breadth of possibilities is quite large. Like it could be a city says, I have an idea for something we could model for how this could spread to many other cities and could grow out, because we know that one of the places where people most often experience kind of a grounding of trust is in their most local environment. And then we could figure out a way to grow that. But what I'm really, when I answer this question, it's not so much as like I'm looking for the public library answer. I'm looking for that startlingly great lever that could make a real difference. And that's part of the reason why we do this challenge this way.
Yeah, no, thank you. And Cecilia, if you want to jump in.
Yeah, I was going to say one of the particular aspects of the open call model, one reason why we use it at Lever for Change, is as an alternative to what typically is an invitation-only model in private philanthropy. When you do invitation-only, you may not be identifying the best, most impactful, most cost-efficient ideas for solving problems. You might decide, for example, on your own that, oh, I want to focus all of my attention on media, when in fact, perhaps some of the most powerful levers for building trust might be around one of these other institutions. So by designing an open call, we've kind of created the space for those ideas to emerge. And we have been very, very careful to focus our attention on the problem that we want to see solved, and to be very open about all the different strategies that might solve them. And so that I think is one of the powers that this open call brings.
Yeah, no, I think that's so right. And one question actually I've gotten a lot was, wait, you want to restore trust in institutions? Like, how about making the institutions better? And I'm like, no, no, no. Yes, that is exactly what we mean. This is not like some big PR campaign. This is how do you make these institutions stronger, more responsive to what Americans want? And then we are restoring trust in that capacity.
Yeah, I'm expecting to see a range of kind of strategies, ranging from things that are focused on building social capital to improving the delivery of government services so people feel more like they can trust what's coming out of it, to increasing accountability. I'm expecting we'll see all sorts of ideas like this.
One of the things that I think the folks listening might want to hear, Cecilia, because they're probably not familiar with Lever for Change that much, is we've already done 16 of these challenges and distributed nearly $2.5 billion in funding for hundreds of organizations and around the world. So say a little bit about kind of the mechanism of the challenges,
Yes.
and also kind of like the kind of the things that we get from this format.
Yes, yes. So I mentioned earlier that our big focus is on openness. And openness requires that we have a transparent process for evaluating proposals. So when you go to the website for the Trust in American Institutions or any of the 16 challenges we've run, you will find the exact scoring rubric, what the evaluation criteria are. You'll find the names and bios of the judges who will help to evaluate those proposals. So we want to make sure that people understand that we're creating a level playing field where everyone has the same amount of information. And we find that that tends to induce a broad and diverse set of participants in our processes overall. We also focus on making sure that we provide value to applicants to make it worthwhile to apply. Even if you may not advance to getting an actual grant, every application is going to receive feedback. And for a donor who works with us, they'll know that we have done a rigorous evaluation process where we have mobilized the wisdom of a broad array of people and who can evaluate those proposals and help the donor make the best choice. The result of all of this is that we have seen that we can make great choices in philanthropy and make philanthropy more equitable and more efficient at the same time. So, Reid, what attracted you to this model? I mean, you were an early supporter. What brought you to it?
Well, I gestured at it a little bit earlier, and since we're on LinkedIn Live, the kind of the notion of networks really appeals to me. I mean, as Cecilia knows, part of how I look at networks is as amplifiers or as trampolines, and so the way that you engage networks can be a real magnifying effect to the scale of what kind of things you can accomplish. And there's networks in kind of multiple angles of this. There's a network of the open call where you kind of go, okay, even of people that you don't necessarily didn't even know that a category of that kind of person existed, or that kind of institution existed, could come forward, and there's kind of a networks of that. Then there's networks that we get from the excellent MacArthur Network and other sources to help kind of look at and kind of to validate and assess the kind of the interesting ideas. That's one of the reasons why the networks of other donors come in, and those donors come in kind of because they go, oh wow, I get to also benefit from this kind of virtual network convening, and this particular project that these experts have particularly validated might not be the right thing for this particular prize, but might really be good for this other thing that I'm trying to accomplish. And so the leverage impact isn't just the prize itself, but the set of different kind of matching that happens. And of course, other people also come into the prize. So you're getting this kind of network amplification from all of these different dimensions. And that helps in all kinds of ways. That helps in originality of ideas. That helps in kind of the risk assessment of the thing that you do in order to make a very big difference. And it also kind of fits with something that I tend to do a lot, which is, not not surprising to people who know or follow me, masters of scale, blitz scaling, right? It's as opposed to like what I care about is acidification in the oceans, right? For me, it's how do we make these very large changes that have a kind of a society, humanity-wide impact to helping elevate our kind of human condition, and which are the ones that we can get the most leverage in order to do. And this is the exact kind of mechanism that does it. And so, I think it's, and Cecilia, who, never toots her own horn enough, is exactly the right kind of entrepreneur. So going back to the kind of Silicon Valley investor mindset, it was like, it took me like, as is usual in these cases, 10 to 15 minutes in conversation with Cecilia in my LinkedIn office, which I still remember that conversation going, yes, we're going to do this. This will be awesome.
Yeah, it one of the things that you highlighted that I probably should have tooted just a little bit more is that, even after this particular open call has identified its initial grantee or grantees, which is what we're hoping for, we are working with the great ideas that we have already vetted to get them to other donors. So we really try to use the network we've built to generate more impact than just a single grant. Of the $2 billion that was referenced earlier that we've facilitated or helped to influence in philanthropic grants, over half of it has been from this kind of, I tend to call it the secondary market because I'm an economist, but there are probably better names for it, but of bringing those ideas and getting them in front of other funders who can take advantage of the fact that we've already done this work.
And I just want to second that as someone who used to run an NGO that used to apply for things all the time. You were applying to one funder and they told you no, and they didn't tell you why, and that was the end of it. And I totally get that sometimes philanthropy has to work like that, but I do think it's like really beautiful that you get judges and practitioners that are in your field scoring your application and finding out where the weak points were. And then even if you don't win the $10 million grant, there is, follow-on capital, which is so fantastic. So I want to encourage everyone who is watching. Thank you already. I see questions in the chat. If there are other questions, please put them in and I will answer them and as they come in. A few dates, which we will also put in the chat, but so everyone knows. Again, February 4th is the webinar with Lever for Change. And then there's a 2-step application process. So you need to register to apply by February 19th, just so we understand the universe of folks who are eventually going to apply. And then the final application is due on March 19th. So February 19th and March 19th are the two dates to work out. And so before I switch to a few more questions, Cecilia, is there anything else that I'm missing that I should mention that you want to talk about this challenge in particular?
Well, I want to double down on the fact that you have to register before you can apply and encourage you that if you're even just thinking about it, registration is a pretty short and simple process. Go ahead and do it so you'll get an invitation to the webinar. I think the other thing I just want to stress is that what this challenge is looking for is they're looking for approaches that are going to use kind of key leverage points. And so to help to rebuild, renew, or establish trust. So it's not that you're going to build a completely new institution necessarily, although if you can figure out how to do that, might work, but that you have identified some key place where what you're going to do can catalyze and kind of have a follow-on effect to really change what the trajectory is for trust.
The other thing, actually, I think it's also worth adding that's true for all of these Lever for Change challenges is that they are independent of the funders, right? So once we've set it up and kind of said, here's what we're trying to do, there's a network of judges. So it isn't, it isn't like a LinkedIn professional network thing. It's what are the really great ideas and kind of bold kind of professional things? And it's evaluated by a group of a diverse, and intelligent, and I mean diverse in all vectors, including experience and cognition and a bunch of other stuff in order to do it. And I think that's another thing to track on these.
No, I think that's so true.
And indeed, if you are interested in joining that evaluation panel, you can send me a note on LinkedIn.
Fantastic. All right, I'm going to switch gears and ask some questions that we've gotten. And so okay, I'm biased. I've been singing the praises of this type of challenge, but Cecilia, sometimes people have, criticisms. Like there's benefits to these kind of open calls, but there are also criticisms. It's an intensive application process. Like, how do you respond to some of those criticisms?
Yes, I mean, I think one of the most frequent criticisms is the fact that many people will apply and only a few of them will actually get a grant through this process. Although, as I mentioned earlier, we work to get those ideas in front of other funders. But what I think is important to recognize is that we have tried to create an application process that is as streamlined as possible, but gets the information that's needed to help the judges make a decision about the work. We have also recognized that there's kind of this, you can not have an open call, and then there's a competition that's happening that you're not aware of, or you can be part of this open call where you know what the evaluation criteria are, you know what the judges are. So there is a way in which the open call is in some ways going to make better use of your time because you have a better idea overall. That's the kind of thing we tend to hear. And one of the reasons why we provide feedback is, and applicants tell us that this feedback is one of the more valuable parts of the process.
Fantastic. And another question we have in the chat is, and Reid, feel free to jump in. I know you just talked about judges and your excitement about it, but what's the thought process behind having peer applicants participate in the scoring, Cecilia?
Well, we've been using this in several of our challenges, and it has several benefits. First of all, it sort of is a preliminary screen. So if there's a completely out to lunch nutty kind of proposal in there, we identify it very early on. But in addition, the organizations who participate find out about the other work that's happening. And we've heard from other challenges that people have formed partnerships with organizations they identified because they saw their application. Organizations get a kind of reality check. It actually is a way of self-assessing your own proposal when you start to read those of others. I've had an applicant say that they got a much more realistic assessment of what they were saying and how they could improve it from reading those other applications overall. And then there is just the fact that when a peer, someone who's in the field, is reading your application versus our evaluation panel, which will include practitioners, but will also have academics and policymakers. When someone who's in your field reads it, they give a different quality of feedback. It's more pragmatic. They, based on the experience, they sometimes can help you identify obstacles you may not have foreseen. So there's a real value that's distinct to the feedback that you're getting from fellow applicants.
And one of the things about Cecilia's answer here, which I think is an important additional answer to the one she gave before, which is there is a lot of work in the application process, not in registration. Remember, this says go register if you have any possibility. That's really easy, like 5 minutes, something. But there's a lot of work in the application process, but that work actually has a bunch of parallels to the work, the value of the work that, for example, entrepreneurs on a funding pattern do, because you think about it, but then you get a bunch of potential peer feedback. You get also some feedback in the process. And then one of the things that the Leverage for Change organization is trying to do is it's trying to maximally connect your application to any possible source that they know that there's a possible matchmaking thing. So it's not just for the prize itself, but all the rest. So there's like this amplification of the work across all fronts, unlike the thing, Aria, that you were mentioning earlier, which is like the classic one is, okay, I applied. Okay, no. Okay, I applied. Okay, no. Okay, I applied.
Yeah. The other thing I'll note too, just is that if you are an organization that's trying to debate whether this is the right thing for you, we have a self-assessment tool that is available that allows you to kind of get a realistic notion of whether your idea fits.
No, I think that's great. And, again, I don't want to scare anyone away. I think in general, everyone should, again, apply, register, check out the eligibility tool. This is not a challenge for just folks who have ideas. Like, this is something where you've seen something work, you've seen that spark, you're so excited, you have that data, and your ability to make it scale is what we really want to help you with, both with capital, but also with, help, resources, people capital, et cetera. So I think both of those really matter. Any other questions? Oh, here we go. The four pillars of the challenge are bold, transformative, scalable, and durable. Can you talk more about durability, Cecilia?
Yes, durability is one of my favorite words actually because it does have these several different ways something can be durable. Um, it can be durable because you've identified something and you change it, and once you change it, there's a stickiness to that change, and the impact of that change has a long life. So it can be durable in that a single change has a long life. It can be durable because you're setting up some kind of infrastructure that can perpetuate itself off into the future, either because of public resources that might go into it, or because there's a market revenue that might go into it, or because it might help to redirect philanthropic resources that may not be used as effectively as they can be. So all of those are ways of creating something that where the impact lasts far beyond the initial expenditure of the grant.
Awesome. Another question for you, Cecilia. Do you feel it's more important to identify a specific or single institution for your work, or are you more interested in sort of addressing solutions to the distrust of American institutions as a whole overall in
Uh,
this time?
Yeah, I'm not sure that I have a bias toward one or the other at this point. One could imagine some change that might affect multiple institutions at once. One can imagine a change where what's been identified, the case has been made that it's absolutely critical to everything, and so you'd want to focus on that institution. We are very open, as I've said, open.
I have to admit, the latter seems very difficult. So if someone has found a way to do that, I'm very excited about it because I certainly haven't thought of a solution yet. And now a very technical question, and I don't know if I know the answer, Cecilia. So let me know if you do. Is a fully executed MOU required at the time of application, or not until the final stage?
I have to admit that I don't remember at this moment, and
Yeah.
so, I urge you to go to the website, it's there, everything is there, everything's transparent, and maybe while you take the next question, I'll do a quick look.
Yeah, beautiful. I think the question is no, it is not required, but we will get back to you on that. All right, let's look at additional questions. Oh, can you talk about subject areas? The question is, is trust in public health eligible? And I will just say, like, yes, yes, yes. We are very interested in sort of all different cause areas, as Reid mentioned earlier. And Cecilia, if you want to say more about that, but we are very open.
Yeah, I think there's trust in public health. I think there's a bigger question of trust in science and scientific expertise. That's certainly one of the areas where we've seen decline. And if people have really great ideas and great work that they've seen that is having an impact there, it would be really exciting to see it in the challenge.
Yeah, and part of the thing to think about kind of the reason why there's a focus on trust is this notion that trust in some ways is importantly self-fulfilling, right? So if you have a trust that the scientific process is working well, there's a dynamic process into the future. It isn't that every particular thing that comes out of a scientific lab or anything else, you have to realize that it's a dynamic process going into the future that's so important. And that trust in, hey, we're working on this intelligently with integrity and with a goal to making it better is part of where trust resides. And so having it in institutions is a kind of a encapsulation for that. And that's why it's so important to rebuild that, because once you start having that, you start not investing in the future as much.
Mm-hmm. No, I think that's a great point. And hot off the presses, everyone, we did hear that an MOU is not required for application. So we are good on that front. And actually, Reid, here's a question for you. Because of your background in technology, how important is it for proposals to be on the bleeding edge of technology when they apply?
Well, one, not at all. That's the question that's part of the reason independence of judges, even though I myself am more knowledgeable about technology, is a little bit of kind of behind the curtains, the Wizard of Oz kind of thing. One of the things we spent several months talking about was, hey, we're in this whole artificial intelligence revolution. Should we be baking that into what we're doing? And we went, no, wait. The genius of this is making it kind of to the bold thoughts that are interesting and the points of knowledge and leverage that are out there. And so someone who comes up with something that has zero to do with technology, but is bold and interesting, great. I mean, I would love myself to learn from that. So.
Love it. And Cecilia, can you share about whether the role of academics and research may play a role in the competition? I can say enthusiastically, yes, academics and research is important. But when you think about it vis-a-vis a direct research approach or a research approach with practical applications?
Yeah, one of the things we've seen in many of our challenges is that there have been academic units who apply, and the ones who have been the most successful, including some who've ended up being finalists and getting substantial funding, have are not at the very, they're not just doing the purest research. They have figured out how to move from research to translation to implementation. And sometimes that's involved having a partnership with someone, a group or an organization that is more on the implementing end or is more on the community based end. So I encourage the academic to think about how what their great idea is going to end up being more than just a kind of interesting statement that people then move on from and actually translate into action.
I think that's great. And we had another question about how we're looking at measuring trust. How can any effort improve that? And I'll just note that we're looking for a wide variety of solutions and how trust is measured. And I also think often people vote with their feet. And so if you have a program that is providing health care to certain populations, and they're not using it, you can assume that trust might be a barrier in addition to other barriers. So I think we're looking for the grantees to tell us what are the ways that trust could be improved in the community. And Cecilia, feel free to add anything.
I was just nodding because we one of the things you should think about doing if you're going to apply is defining exactly how you're going to know that what you're doing is working. And that means coming up with some metrics that we should look at for trust.
Yeah, and that's precisely the brilliance of kind of the open call and the network, because it's like here's how you should potentially think about trust, and here's something that happened. You're like, wow, that's brilliant. We should do that. And so it would be the kind of thing we wouldn't want to overly channel people into. Cecilia has some good thoughts, Aria has some good thoughts, I have some good thoughts. We wouldn't want to overly channel into the thoughts we have.
Awesome. Well, I want to thank Reid and Cecilia so much for being here. Again, for everyone who tuned in, we really appreciate it. We're so excited about this. There's many other opportunities, whether it's the February 4th webinar, check out the website and the eligibility tool. We want to make sure that we are super responsive to everyone's questions, and also that everyone gets the same opportunity to ask questions and receive that information back. So with that, I will close it. Again, check out leverforchange.org. And we're excited to see all the applications that roll in. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Aria. Thanks, everyone.